is only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. This week I'm talking to Anna, a lovely lady who wrote to me last year, and I wrote back to her, and she asked if she could be the very first guest I've ever had on the Talking to the Dead podcast. So without any further ado, I will start you with our conversation. Sorry, that was one of my dogs. Hi, Anna. Thank you very much for coming on to the Talking to the Dead podcast.
Hello, I'm very honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Anna, you first contacted me last year, and I still remember receiving your long email. Do you want to tell the listeners briefly what you said in that email and why you contacted me?
So it was after I listened to the seventh episode, I think. It was where you opened your email up to people to contact you. And I felt very happy listening to your podcast and very heard because since I am a pretty spiritual person and I don't talk to other people about it that much, because I feel like it's not that understood, and sometimes I get looked at pretty weirdly for that, so I don't really talk about it that much. And I had some not so good mental experiences before I was depressed, because I had some complications in primary school and also in middle school. So
It's pretty tough isn't it, being a young girl growing up in the world these days?
yes, exactly. And I'm also autistic,
Yeah.
so I often have problems with communicating with other people, and it has shown a lot in my early childhood. So I got diagnosed pretty late. I was 9, and so I didn't know what was going on because the other kids always were like that I'm weird, and I did things differently and I looked at things differently. I still do.
Can
I
you
can
give
change that.
could you give an example of how you felt you were weird or how you felt you were different?
Um, I didn't feel it. For me, I did everything the others did. I tried to be like the others,
Yeah.
but they showed me that I was weird, and I let them tell me that I was weird. So
It's so interesting to hear you talk like that because as you've been following the podcast, you know that I have twin girls, age 14, and they're not diagnosed as autistic, but we sometimes joke in the family that perhaps they are a little bit, and they always look at me and they think that I'm a bit Asperger's, and I'm not formally diagnosed as Asperger's either, but we do things that people think are weird.
yes, it's sometimes nowadays I'm glad that I have this diagnosis.
Yes.
I'm in autistic specific therapy
Yeah.
since I was 12,
Yeah.
and it has helped me a lot. It has helped me well, now I can remember something. When I was talking to someone, would always stare in their eyes and wouldn't blink. I wouldn't
Yes.
move my face. I
Yes.
would just stare in their eyes, and I also wouldn't smile or something, but I didn't notice that I was doing it. It was creeping other people out, so
Ah,
that was
okay.
probably something that but yeah.
It's funny,
So
with me, people thought when I was young that probably I was a bit autistic, but as an older generation person, autism really wasn't very well understood, and people didn't get a diagnosis in those days. So I probably spent my whole life maybe being Asperger's, slightly Asperger's, but having no real ability for people to understand that. And then
mm,
with my two girls, yes, things are so much more advanced, and people understand it a lot more. It's probably a bit like you said right at the beginning, that you felt in a way you felt embarrassed about talking about things because people wouldn't understand you or people would think you're weird. Isn't that strange? It's just what people think about
mm,
psychic things. People think you're weird to talk about psychic things.
yeah, I think that's weird too, because I think it's something completely normal, like people talking about religion. I think
Yes,
it's pretty close to each other. And I mean, for me, I don't really have a religion, but I believe in nature and
I
that,
know, I know. That certainly came through when I was sitting in that Friedhof, that graveyard in Rodenkirchen. I was absolutely surrounded by this need to talk to you about nature and um, flowers and getting close to nature.
yes, that's why I was really surprised. And because for the woman, you just said a lady, so I don't know who it was exactly, but it also made me really happy that this came through to you
Yes,
because
that was lovely, wasn't it? That she came through in that podcast as a result of me reading your email, and I can't remember whether she was somebody who was buried there, or I actually don't remember. And the funny thing is, I think I've mentioned before, I never listen to my podcasts really. But I have this imposter syndrome. I just don't want to listen to myself. And the only time I've ever done it actually was when I started writing the books of the podcast, which I've done. And I had to obviously listen to it because I had to write it down
mm,
and rewrite it and everything. But yes, but that lady was wonderful. And anyway, I'm jumping ahead a bit. So tell me what you said in your email that caused me to go and talk to the lady in the graveyard.
as I already said, I was depressed,
Yes.
and I also had some suicide attempts. I can't really remember how many I had.
Mm,
It was a few. It
mm.
was more than one, and most of them I tried to jump. In my school, it wasn't like a normal building. It's an old building. It's a monastery. So
Yes.
on the one side we have a monastery, and on the other side there's school.
Yeah.
For safety reasons, I don't want to tell which school,
Of course not. Of course not.
but they had on the hallways. It wasn't windows. It was just some bows. And one time, I think it was the first attempt. I um I remember we were sitting um in a circle with a teacher. I don't know what we were doing there, but we were sitting, and then I sometimes heard voices telling me to jump and um to kill myself, and I don't know what that was all about.
Okay.
I think it was my own mind. I don't know, but it really got overwhelming, and then I ran out the room and tried to jump out of the hallway. So and it was going on for a few hours, and it was they were calling my parents, and my parents were also the ones pulling me back, and some teachers and sports teachers, and uh, there were some moments where there were 5 adults pulling me back. Like and for me it was like I gained so much strength, but for the wrong thing, obviously. Um, and I also can't remember a lot of what happened. It just happened so fast, and some moments were also blacked out. And then from one moment to the other, it was over. So I was back to normal again,
Did,
you
did
could say,
you
but
did you not mention as well that at one point you also felt when you tried to jump once an unseen force holding you back? Did I read that? You as if there was
not
somebody
holding
who
me back.
wasn't there holding you back. It was like a spirit holding you back.
Mm, it it was more feeling like someone who was pushing towards the bow to
Oh,
jump.
oh, really? So
Like
I got that the wrong way around. Somebody was actually encouraging
yes,
you to jump.
yes, something like that. Like something was controlling my body in this
Ah,
direction.
that's very scary.
Yes, it was scary. Um, and when it was over, I first of all couldn't remember a lot, and then it all came like really slowly. Um, Afterward, I was in a in a mental hospital
Yeah.
for I think 2 weeks or so.
Yes.
I was. Hmm?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
sorry, we have a slight delay. I'm just saying yes.
Okay. Um, yeah. And so I had a few attempts in between, but they weren't that intense. And then for like 2 years I was clean. I was happy. And then uh, my last attempt was um what it's called when you a Rückfall.
You broke up a little bit there. Say it again.
Yes, so I broke up a little, and that was the most intense attempt, I would say. So
Oh,
I had pet rats, and they didn't live at this point, but I had a cleaning solution because the cage was made out of wood and it was really big, so it was hard to clean. So I had one specific cleaner that I would only use once a month or so. That was really strong, and I wouldn't have the rats in the cage at that moment. And I still had that cleaner, and I drank like all of what was in that 1 liter bottle. And after that, I felt like an instant regret.
definitely.
And then I ran into the living room and told my parents. And then no, no, wait. I forgot something. I puked
Yeah.
onto the floor, and then I ran into the living room, and I was so scared to tell my parents. And then we called the ambulance. Uh, uh, and I remember I puked all the way through. It really wasn't that fun. I almost passed out.
Yeah.
And then when we arrived at the hospital, I um I can't remember that much, but I know that I was getting weaker and weaker. Um, and they gave me the needle you put into your
Yes, I suppose you call it
like
like an IV line into you with liquid.
um no, isn't that a thing you put on the chest? The stickers.
Oh,
But
yes.
yeah,
I know, I understand what you mean. Those sort of things to measure your heart rate and stuff.
yes, I got all of that, and
Yeah, yeah.
then I was at the station, and I was laying there, and I was sleeping,
Yeah.
And then what I also wrote into my email, which still is in my mind pretty often. I woke up for a few seconds and I saw bright red light, white light,
White light.
sorry.
Yeah.
And everything was beeping, and there were the doctors, the nurses coming in. And they weren't allowed to tell me what happened. So I still don't know what it exactly it was, but I think it was something from my heart. I don't know. But one moment it felt like I was dead, like I was transcending from my body. And since that moment, I felt really drawn to the spiritual realm and all those things and about death and all of that. So that's kind of where it all started.
Thank you very much for going through that. It can't be easy to talk about. I'm interested, obviously, that you went through, I presume, I would call it a near-death experience. And I did a couple of episodes discussing things like that. I think
Oh,
a near-death experience, I think, is something that I've obviously been talking about before. And I think that it's a different experience for everyone. Um, but I'm fascinated in the whole, as you probably know from the latest podcasts, I'm very interested in the idea of consciousness and exactly what is consciousness. And if we somehow, it's an interesting idea, if we are somehow getting our consciousness from outside rather than the consciousness being within us. And there is a huge amount of research going on in medical facilities at the moment because they do think that perhaps consciousness, what makes us ourselves, is not inside us at all. We're just receivers, like radio receivers, and we're picking up the consciousness that's outside, and we're sort of downloading it and using it to operate this body that we have. A long story, but I'm very interested in the fact that you had that out of body experience. Have you had any other experiences like that where you felt removed from your body?
mm, not that I could think of really, but sometimes when I meditated, it feels like you're like waving out of your body. It's
Yes.
hard to describe, but I don't know if you know what I mean, but sometimes it's like you like moving in big waves, still in your body, but like kind of, you know, waving around it. That's
Yeah.
but in other terms, I don't think I had another experience like that.
Okay. So
So
that email and that exchange happened, I think, last year probably. And then
mhm.
I went rather late into this particular graveyard near where I live and had that experience where this lady came and was talking about how actually how wonderful life is and how lucky in a way I think we are to live the life that we do live. And I suppose when you're sitting in a graveyard surrounded by people who are no longer living, um, to them it must be really nice to see somebody who is alive and somebody who has all that energy still from life. Not that I suppose um, passing
Mm.
on and being dead is a bad thing. It's just that there is an attraction, I think, between the living and the dead. I actually watched with my daughters Coco the other night. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a Disney film. Have you seen Coco?
About the Mexican movie about
Yes.
this, but
It's
I didn't watch it, but I think I know it.
it's definitely worth seeing.
But
It's a lovely film. It's all about the Day of the Dead in Mexico, and this little boy, he has a grandmother, and he finds out that his grandmother was once married to a famous guitar player. And this guitar player is now long since dead. And on the Day of the Dead, this little boy suddenly manages to um, jump from this world to where all the dead people are, and experiences this sense that because the people who are being remembered on the Day of the Dead in the graveyard, they are still able to function in the next dimension because they're remembered. But as soon as they're not remembered anymore, then they end up leaving that dimension and they have no more ability to contact the living anymore. And in a way, it's quite sad, but it was actually a beautiful film because I think it's largely true. I think if you are in a graveyard, um, you know, there is a bit, it's not you anymore, but there is a sense of aeroplanes going on. Sorry about this. I can edit all this out. It's not it's not you anymore. It's a bit of residual energy of what was you that still is left behind, but that energy ends up leaving the longer you're there, and the longer that people perhaps don't bother visiting you or remembering you, which was pretty much the same idea. And that was confirmed to me a couple of weeks ago when I went to another graveyard locally, and I covered that in my last episode, where I came across a young lady called Julia, who drowned in 2023. Have you listened to that episode yet?
Not yet. I'm just trying to work my way up still, but
Yeah, no,
I think
have a listen to that
I read
episode. Yeah. It's
yeah, I read the description about it.
yeah, yes, and she's there, and what's left of her energy on Earth is there, and she's actually, it was rather sad because she seemed to be quite lonely because people don't visit her that much. And this has come through to me a lot of times. And when I go to these huge, great big parks of the dead, I call them, in Cologne, that are as big as Central Park. One of them was as big as Central Park in New York, and just full of gravestones and people, hardly anybody walking around, just a few gardeners, a few people just using it as a park rather than actually knowing anybody who was there. And I was really overcome by this communication from the energy that was there, of not only gratitude that I was there to 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 try to communicate with them, but also a little bit of sadness that people don't bother anymore. And in a way, the futility of building these cities of the dead with these very elaborate graves. For what? Because they're not really there anymore. And people don't visit. It was a very strange feeling I had. Yeah,
Yes, I don't visit our graveyard that often, but sometimes I walk by it. We have behind my house there's like a path leading um kind of into the city, and you walk at some point at this path you walk past our graveyard, and ours is pretty empty too most of the time, and but I always get this strong feeling coming from that side. It's and what I also think is really sad is that graveyards are um said to be something to be scared of, like in movies.
yeah, yeah,
I don't think it should be scary or um to be there and then to maybe communicate like you do
yes,
when you're
yes, yes.
in those places. So
Yes, I think Hollywood has got a lot of
and
a
also
lot of
about
responsibility for that. I think Hollywood has made people think that anything connected with spirits or people who've died or anything is a taboo subject. And if you are going to talk about it, it's got to be horrifying and it's got to be scary.
yeah, also like the Ouija board.
Yeah, yeah,
People like say they're playing it and making like a fun joke out of it or at parties or something. But that's like the thing you shouldn't do. It's disrespectful, and I wanted to get one because it's hard for me to communicate with that people. I obviously can't do it like you do that easily, but I've tried, and I don't think I have really got into contact. But I wanted to buy one, and my parents were really not feeling it. They said not in their house because they're scared too, because they said, yeah, we had stories of that and friends and all of that. So yeah,
Yes,
it is what it is.
I have done an episode discussing those things. You'll probably get to it eventually. And I'm completely on your parents' side, actually, because I actually bought one too. And then I sent it straight back. I had some experiences when I was young, and also I had some knowledge of people at school who had used Ouija boards and had some horrifying experiences. But also because it's all connected to what the podcast does, I thought maybe it'd be worth looking at it. And I was actually talking to a friend who said she would do it with me. But in the end, before that, I decided no, I'm not doing that. I just thought that was far too scary. And as you'll find out if you listen to the episode, you've got to be so careful with that sort of thing because rather like taking hallucinogenic drugs or any form of drug that somehow removes you from reality. Ouija boards also end up projecting stuff from outside into your consciousness. And it's not always necessarily good. You just don't have any control over what that is because it comes in pretty uninvited. And it doesn't have to necessarily be evil or bad spirits or anything like that. It can quite often be people who are either asleep or are currently out of their body and they're traveling, if you like, and they can inject themselves into your consciousness. And if they're not very nice people, then you're not going to have a very nice experience meeting them, just like if you meet people for real. And and then if you want to believe it, yes, there could be non-physical intelligence out there that's how it is. It just exists as a non-physical form of intelligence, non-human intelligence. If that is existing out there, which I think it probably does, it can also come into you if you're using things like that. As much as it potentially can come into me if I'm channeling spirits, which is why I make sure I do a sort of little preparation, which you don't hear on air, but I do a little preparation before to protect myself in case anything unpleasant comes through. And I always say a little thing afterwards to thank those that have come through and sending them on their way to make sure that they're not hanging around. And I believe that's what you're supposed to do with the Ouija board as well. And a lot of kids who muck around with it do not do that. So they end up inviting something in that they have no control of and then can't get rid of it once they've got it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Um, as I said, I think it's always a thing of also a thing of how you see it because, as I said, some people see it as a game to play the user board, but I don't think
Yes.
it's a game.
No, no.
It,
None of this is a game. I mean, this is something that's come through very clearly in my podcast and all the stuff that I've done over the last 2 and a bit years, is that this is not a game. This is completely real. All of the stuff that has been done, which you might call black magic or esoteric over the hundreds and hundreds of years of research, all has the same effect. It somehow either alters your consciousness or it allows other conscious entities to enter into you. And of course, if you're allowing these things to come into your consciousness, if you're inviting them in, you've got to be incredibly careful what you're doing and make sure that it's not affecting your psychology somehow. So I certainly do believe that. But yeah, so that aside, we've only got about 6 minutes left, and I do want to let you ask me some questions. So, have you got anything you'd like to ask me that I could perhaps try to answer?
Yes, I do have a few questions. I wrote them down, so I will be looking. So, as I said before, I try to communicate with other consciousnesses, like dead people, and I wanted to ask. I mean, I had some signs. I don't well, I don't know if they actually are signs of communication. So and also so I will just start.
Okay.
The first thing is ringing in the ear, like a really high, bright ringing in the ear that I sometimes have out of nowhere. Also, like when I'm outside, I sometimes have a really strong wind in the face. It's like kind of um a derealization, really, when you get that strong wind and kind of like it's kind of cold, but also isn't cold. Um, it's like you I don't know how to describe it. And also something I have come across recently a lot is like when I look up in the sky, it's like a bright white light or sp just a little spot in the sky that also vanishes quickly after that. So I was wondering if you could tell me, or if you know how that could possibly be connected to
Okay.
spirit.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and a lot of friends and listeners have written to me and mentioned things like coincidences, things suddenly happen, or certain numbers repeat themselves, or things suddenly appear in the house, or they suddenly see something, or something happens to them. These types of coincidence um, generally are an indication, I think, of some form of communication. Now, in terms of ringing of ears, I can only say firsthand that I tend to get coincidences that tells me something's brewing, or I can get feelings, not necessarily wind in the face or anything, but certainly I've had ringing in the ears, and I sometimes come over with an emotional feel, or I can um, feel something physically. That often happens if I'm sitting in a building or in a place, and in that second series of the podcast, I went up to a lot of places, whether they were haunted houses or churches or places where the Nazis put the Jews. I went to places where they were tortured and executed as well. You'll get to that in the podcast. And certainly I felt things. Yeah, I felt sadness. I felt emotions. Um, and sometimes ringing in the ears can be part of that as well. And then, yeah, lastly, as well as seeing things. Now, there is a sort of a crossover that's happening right now in the world between what people are describing as unidentified aerial phenomena and spiritual communication. And in my podcast, I go into this in a lot of detail because it's very, very interesting. Um, if you're actually seeing something small and white maybe in the sky that is there, and you're sure it's real, and then it just disappears, that might be what you're seeing. You might be seeing what they're now calling an unidentified aerial phenomena. Would you say what you saw was real?
Yes, I would surely say that. it was
Okay,
real. Yes.
okay. Because this is happening all over the world right now. It's been happening just this week. I think it's been happening in Belgium over an airport, which is not far away from where I am in Cologne. It certainly happened in Austria. I know it happened it happened there, I think, last month. It's been happening in Denmark. It's happened in Sweden. It's happened in Germany, in other places. And it's the same thing. People are calling them, the media call them drones, but I don't think they're drones at all. Quite what they are, I don't
Mm,
know. But if you're seeing them, you could be seeing something that is potentially a non-human intelligence. And this is how they're making themselves known to us.
I thank you very much. And also to this light, it doesn't look like a drone. It's more like I don't know if you
Like an
have seen
orb
it.
or something, like an orb.
Yeah, it's but it doesn't have a specific shape. It's more like if you have a brush and like stroke um across the sky,
Yeah.
and then but it's also kind of blurred, and
Okay.
it's also shining a bit.
People are describing seeing these orbs, which are kind of like balls of light. Sometimes they're described as white, sometimes as blue or red, and nobody quite knows what they are. But the media and obviously has decided to call them UAPs or drones. And I think it's quite interesting that there does seem to be some sort of cover up going on because the governments either know what these things are and can do absolutely nothing about it, or they don't know what they are and they can't do anything about it, which seems to be even worse. Uh,
Yes.
anyway, so
So
that's my answer to
yeah,
that.
but it would be interesting. Thank you very much. Um, it would be interesting to know what exactly they are, and if it's actually spirits trying to make themselves known to us or like to the world to show that they're here
Well, my
would be.
there,
But
you know,
thank you very
I'm
much.
going to be doing some. I'm going to be doing another episode on it because there is so much being discussed at the moment, and it does kind of depend on. It depends on your frame of reference. If you're Christian, you believe probably that it might be angels and demons. If you're not a Christian, you might believe that. It could be aliens or it could be interdimensional non-human intelligence trying to communicate with us. Or, it could be, if you're just a military person, it could be the Russians or it could be the Chinese. Um, who knows? I mean, my personal view, uh, I'm, and you won't be surprised, is that I think it's far more spiritual than the Russians and the Chinese. And I also believe that it is definitely some form of non-human connection, but I'm not sure whether they are existing in an alternate dimension that exists at the same time as our dimension and it occasionally pops through and we can see it, or if it is indeed another species of intelligent life that has either been here for thousands of years and makes itself known at particular times for particular reasons, or it actually does come from interstellar space. I have no real take on that. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's been happening usually around airports and usually around military sites and also sites that have housed nuclear weapons. And it's as if perhaps this non-human intelligence is rather concerned what we're doing to the planet and that we have the capacity potentially to blow up this planet. And this planet, they may be saying to us, is not yours alone. You're sharing this planet. Therefore, you have no right to constantly take yourself to the brink of destruction. That's not my idea. Those ideas are floating around. And if you listen to some of the podcasts that are going on at the moment, they are the religious ones definitely believe that this is all part of the second coming of Jesus, and what we're actually seeing are biblical prophecies coming true, and these beings, whether they're angels and demons, are all part of a global awareness that we're going through, that was all prophesied in the books and in the Bible. I don't know. I don't know. I hope to do more research on that. But there we go. That's my
Yeah.
that's my take on little balls of white light.
Yeah. But I don't know if it's something bad. I feel when I personally if, sort of like a warmth, not and it's not like a bad feeling or something. I feel kind of a warmth, but as you said, we don't know about that yet, but maybe we will in the future. And also I think it's quite interesting too that there are so many kinds of different people who have different opinions on that and look at it in different ways. And I always think it's kind of interesting when something is happening all over the world and everyone is talking about something.
Yes, I think what is of interest to me is obviously I started this podcast as a Talking to the Dead podcast, and somewhere last year it turned into a real understanding and now a belief that there is no such thing as death. There is merely the transfer of your consciousness out of your body somewhere else. And where that somewhere else is, I went into quite a lot of detail as well, which you'll come to as you go through the podcasts. And what it all means, and is also I've come across that as well. One area, of course, that is really interesting me now, and I want to spend more time looking at it, is if it is true that consciousness is as is being described in actually the latest book by Dan Brown, which I've just finished reading, which is called The Secret of Secrets. He wrote the Da Vinci Code. I don't know if you've heard of that book. It was made into a Tom Hanks movie a few years ago. But in his latest book, The Secret of Secrets, he talks
Definitely.
about non-local consciousness. And the idea of non-local consciousness, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is that consciousness does not reside inside us. It resides outside of us, and we're merely picking it up. And if that's the case, it would indicate that when we what we call die, all that happens is that consciousness that we do have inside of us goes back, if you like, where it came from, which is a wonderful concept that we are actually all part of the same consciousness. We're all connected. So
Mhm.
I'm believing this more and more, but I want to get some spiritual communication here to help me understand it a bit more. I'd like to find out, whether this whole concept of us having non-local consciousness could be true. In the book that I've just finished reading, and Dan Brown, the author, is very well known for doing huge amounts of research for his novels, and usually in between all the rubbish, there's usually some truth in his books. And in his book, he describes that scientists to this very day have absolutely no idea how our brain, which is just flesh and blood, can store the amount of information that it stores in a lifetime. And they use an analogy in the book by posing the question, do you know, for instance, if you could store all of the knowledge that you have in your brain on DVDs, which are, I think, about 4 GB each, if you could store them, all the knowledge that you ever learn in your life, that's languages, all the pictures, all the memories, everything that you ever learn in your life. The question is asked, how high do you think if you stacked all these DVDs on top of each other, how high do you think the stack would be? What do you think, Anna? How high do you think a stack of DVDs of Anna or Philip might be?
Phew. Um, Yeah, they're pretty thin. Maybe 2 meters, I would say.
I may have this wrong. I'll have to check again in the book, but I think she says it would be from here to the International Space Station.
It, that, that's pretty high, actually.
That's
More
enormous.
than 2 meters.
That's enormously high. And having said that, then that you're talking about quantities of data which are just beyond almost our comprehension, are inside our brain if it was being stored in conventional ways. How can that be? So the idea is it's impossible. There's no way we could be having all this data inside a brain that's made up of synapses and brain cells and blood and flesh. It's impossible. There has to be something else going on. And the idea that's posed in the novel, which is an idea that's being studied in Harvard, I believe, is this idea of non-local consciousness, which is, if you like the Apple cloud. It's all in the cloud. And we are just like iPhones with very limited abilities, but we're able to communicate. But the fascinating idea is that it's not just one way. We're not just receiving. We are also sending out information to this cloud. And that would really just explain so much. It would explain inspiration. It would explain spiritual communication. It would explain psychic thought. It would also explain what happens to our consciousness when we die, or when we astrally project, or when we're not conscious. So it's a fascinating field of study, and it's interesting that science has now begun to grab hold of this, and they're trying to understand it and think, well, maybe we could never understand it given our current level of physics and science. But if we try to say that in fact it might be connected in some way to quantum physics, which is a developing science that is radically different from the science that we're taught, and it's something that many people are just only beginning to understand, then maybe as we understand more and more quantum physics and mechanics, we might then be able to understand the true way that existence operates.
Yeah, I also had since I graduated here in Austria. It's called the Matura. I had I also had some quantum physics in school in my physics class, and also from Albert Einstein, the relativity theory. And it's these 3 parts of science. It's the classic science. It's about like mechanics and all that, like power, electricity, and then relativity theory from Albert Einstein, and the quantum physics. And to understand the problem of modern science is to connect these 3 too, because all of those 3 make sense separately, but when you try to use them together, they work against each other. So that's like the modern science problem at the moment. So
Yeah, and that's so fascinating, and it always makes me wonder why science was so resistant to anything spiritual or psychic or paranormal for so long. And now, of course, scientists are realizing that whatever's going on in creation is way beyond our understanding with normal conventional science. I think
yeah,
also,
I personally think oh, I'm sorry.
no, sorry, it was that la
Should
it
I
is
talk
it,
now,
you
or
yeah,
do
you
you
talk now, you talk now. It was the lag again.
I'm sorry. I personally think that spiritually spirit spirituality and science are not separate things. I think they belong together and they fuse together. And I also think they don't work without each other.
Yeah.
And I also think it's beautiful that also like that life works um, through science, but also I don't think it would work without spirituality because that's the thing that gives life life. You know what I mean? It wouldn't exist without it. But yeah, today it was really fun to do this today, and I'm feeling really good at the moment too, I have to
Good,
say.
good. I'm so glad you're feeling well. There was one question I had for you, one last question before we go. Um, when I actually was in the graveyard and I had that communication about nature and flowers and stuff like that, um, have you done anything about that, or has it had any impact on your life because you heard it from me?
Um, Actually, yes, because for a moment, for some time, I kind of got away a bit from this idea of nature to notice. I noticed less about the things around me, and when I listened to it, I tried to notice more and to feel it more. For example, when I go on walks with my dog every day, I try to be aware of my surroundings and to watch the birds. I always like to watch birds because I think it's really cute when they fly around from a tree and also when they sing around.
The nature aspect and the importance of nature, and if that message meant anything to you, and have you been able to act on that feeling that was passed through to me?
Um, uh, yes, as I said, I got I remember to notice the nature around
Yes,
me more, and also like now that fall has started in the early beginning when all the leaves fell down and onto the pathways, and I was walking through those leaves, and it kind of it, it may be a bit childish, but I liked the way it sounded and then the way it looked when everything is full of those autumn leaves, and then I enjoy it. I try to listen more to the nature around me and to um, look more into my surroundings and also the plants, the animals, and like I said, the birds. I love watching them and also breathing the air. I think in fall the air is more fresh, but that's besides the point. I feel I enjoy it more, and it makes me happier um in my everyday life, even when I'm not in nature at the moment. So I'm really happy about that.
That's really, really great news. Because probably the loneliest aspect of what I do is that I don't, up till now on purpose, I don't really have much communication outside doing the podcast, which is just, a man in a room with a microphone. And it's really lovely to get a chance to get some feedback from you about how the podcast and what I do actually did make some small change, some small difference.
Yeah, I really want to thank you for that and for reaching out to me and then to answering my questions and everything. It really means a lot to me. I really have to say that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. I've enjoyed it, and speak to you soon.
See you soon. Thank you very much.